Hello and welcome to Rendy Reviews, where I, Rendy Jones, review the latest in film and television. Today, we'll be reviewing Clifford the Big Red Dog, the live-action film adaptation based on the Scholastic children's series of picture books by Norman Bridwell. Clifford the Big Red Dog has been a phenomenon in media for as long as I can remember. I grew up reading the books in grade school and watching the PBS Kids show where John Ritter voiced the titular character before his passing. Since that cartoon from the early 2000s, Clifford has had an animated movie, a reboot series, a plentiful amount of books, and is the official mascot to the publisher Scholastic. So it hurts to see his live-action adaptation be a lazy formulaic product of a Hollywood trend that seriously needs to end right now. When it comes to setting the stage for Clifford's origin, the writers sort of understand the basis of the relationship between Emily Elizabeth and the iconic Red Dog. The first act, which establishes the ho-hum life of Emily Elizabeth, played by Darby, tugged on my heartstrings a bit. She moved into an East Harlem neighborhood with her mom, played by Sienna, Guillory, and they live in a lavish apartment, due to her mom being a successful yet busy paralegal. The 12-year-old is an outcast in her new private school, for she's not as uppity as her snobbish upper-class peers. Mom only has time for work and hardly anything else, so Emily has to be babysat by her estranged screw-up Uncle Casey, played by Whitehall. Given the lonely life she leads, you immediately sympathize with Emily and root for her to have this cute little CG dog. This dog is a necessity because she has nobody else. Darby Camp and Whitehall are the two functioning components that make this movie moderately fun. Camp carries the film with her effortlessly sweet and comedically cynical charm. A majority of the story focuses on Emily and her Uncle Casey having to set aside their differences to protect and take care of Clifford. And when the comedy sets in, its effectiveness mostly stems from the banter Camp and Whitehall share. They have a fun dynamic with good comedic timing that had me chuckling throughout. What else? The watercolor illustrations featured in the end credits are pretty good. Somewhere in Hollywood, there is a rogue producer who's making it their lifelong quest to collect every children's series and set them in NYC in the form of a feature film, while doing little to nothing with the characters and their stories. They struck twice with the Smurfs live-action films, then again earlier this year with Tom and Jerry. Now they done did it again with Clifford the Big Red Dog. Listen, I have nothing against NYC because, well, I live here. I was born and raised here. This is my city. This is my home. This is my people's. But seeing so many live-action films based on children's series dump familiar characters within the city so they could raise antics is so exhausting. Especially when they have fictional settings that exist within the source material. It makes me want to move to LA. Oh no, I'll never do that. But maybe. Because of this, Clifford comes off as an exercise of redundant slapstick and gross out dog jokes set within the city rather than a proper adaptation that explores the love between Emily Elizabeth and Clifford. I gave credit to the first act, which makes you sympathize with Emily Elizabeth, but when Clifford turns big in the span of a night, the film takes a major decline in quality, as it becomes an endless series of chaotic mayhem caused by the Big Red Dog, with Emily Elizabeth and Casey trying to cover everything up. The movie mostly explores the relationship between the kid and her estranged uncle rather than her dog that she immediately risks everything for in a day. The titular 10-foot dog becomes discarded as a MacGuffin to keep the plot in motion, most importantly when he becomes the target of an owner of an animal genetics company, played by Hale, who wants him for their products. The story moves down the children's live-action IP checkbox and does every generic and unfunny joke known to man to garner laughs from its young audience, including, but not limited to, a character destroying a penthouse or some sort of living space, gross-out jokes about peas and butts, random slapstick, the whole 9 yards. The movie leaves no room for audiences to breathe, for it's so hastily paced as if it was edited by a trailer house who doesn't understand the definition of the word continuity. The movie's editing comes across like a rough draft due to every cut being so jarringly choppy, where the majority of the shots in its composition are inserts and close-ups of the characters who, most of the time, don't even look like they occupy the same space as the CG dog. This makes no sense because the behind-the-scenes photos that leaked a few years ago show that there were skeleton CG stand-ins for the model. But when put into action, this movie that was filmed within 2 months makes it look like it was done within a week with no time or consideration for reshoots. If that's not bad enough, the CGI is also frighteningly inconsistent. Clifford features a caveat of unpolished and downright terrible CGI that feels straight out of an early 2000s movie. It looks more suitable for television than a big screen. That's why this is going to Paramount Plus, baby. There's some fine detailing and texture on the dog himself, but his photorealistic design and wonky movement are nightmarish. Don't get me started on the non-Clifford CG assets that involve him getting into hijinks with real people. What you see in the trailer, terrible CGI and all, is the final result. How does something as old as Stuart Little look more effective than a 2021 release? There was potential for a good adaptation here, and while it might amuse a very young demographic, Clifford the Big Red Dog is rote, recycling lazily constructed ideas undercut by poor direction and terrible editing with little to no form of continuity, and has regressive CGI that makes you cringe. At the end of the day, it's another terrible live-action film adaptation that proves some properties should simply be left alone unless you're gonna adapt it into an animated movie. As if that is what they should have done in the first place. That's why I'm giving Clifford the Big Red Dog a big old 2 out of 5. If you're watching this video post or prior to the film's release, let me know what you think. Do you agree or disagree with my takes? Leave a comment in the comment section below. And hey, while you're here, be sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel, or head on over to RendyReviews.com where you can find the written review of this film along with hundreds of more reviews. And hey, subscribe to our Patreon where you can get early access to written reviews, video reviews, and a bunch of other exclusive content that you don't want to miss. Thanks for watching, I'm Rendy Jones, and I'll see y'all next time.